Well, let's hop in. Let's get in here. It's great to meet you. Thank you
Yep.
so much for taking a minute out today.
Oh, I love it, Joe. Let's do it.
Yes, sir. So let's begin our journey with this. I always start with this question. 6 years ago, this pandemic was changing everything, changing our lives. How did you get through that era, and how has it influenced the work and the things you do today?
Wow. Yeah. I'm probably one of the 1% or less that the pandemic came right at the right time for me, and it changed my life for the good. At the time, I was really depressed. I was searching for things that weren't in my control, and the pandemic made me slow down. And it made me be, in a room by myself day after day after day and really start wrestling with these things. I had time to get my health back. I had time to get my mental fitness back. I had time to get my spiritual fitness back. So from a personal aspect, it was really good. From a work perspective, as a owner of a small business consulting company, everything was up in arms and figured out could employees that previously couldn't work from home now work from home, all those kind of stressors that came into play. And then it's kind of now blended into a place where we always work from home all the time because, once people started coming back to work, they had downside space so much there was no room for us contractors to come in. So it's kind of like an ongoing COVID. But again, now that we're in year 6 or so of it, I now have time to adjust to it, and now it just seems like a normal day of life. Except that now I have to force myself to get out
Yeah,
because I can pretty much just stay in my house all the time, and that's not good for the human spirit as well. So.
for sure. So let's get into your life as a performance coach. You got podcasting, you're an author, you got all these things going on. I'm going to put you in front of 12-year-olds at career day, and one of the kids in the back of the room wants to know what you do for a living. How do you synthesize your world to make sense to their brains?
Yeah, my purpose and my vision is to try to make people's lives better, to let them see through my writing, through my podcast, through even my coaching, where they've maybe fallen in life. And I know this because I was that guy. 6 years ago, I weighed 354 pounds. I had given up on life. I had no real purpose that was mine. I was working for someone else. So all of this is just trying to show people either help pull themselves up or never get to where that is in the first place.
So, what did you want to be when you were that age? When you were at career day at 12 or 13, what was your dream gig?
Man, probably 12 or 13. I probably wanted to be a professional tuba player because it was the one thing I was really good at and I enjoyed it. Yeah, so that was that. I would have probably said that, or yeah, let's go with that.
Right on. So, let's get to how this happened. Take me back to your childhood. Where were you born and raised, and what were these elements that were planted into you that eventually became your voice, became your profession right now?
Yeah, I was born in a town called Christiansburg, Virginia. Most people are like, "Where is that?" I like to tell people it's the exit to Virginia Tech. So because people could find that on the map, where
Yeah.
Christiansburg may be a little bit more difficult to find. Um, and I grew up with a very loving family, and very supportive. My mom was an educator, retired as a dean. My dad owned a men's clothing store as a kid, so I was really given a great work ethic as a kid. But when I went out on my own, I started working for other people's approval and never considered my own. It was always the next achievement. It was always this, that. And what I found is over time, I had outsourced my soul. But I've always had a heart for people. I always love people and I want them to be well. In fact, when I ended up telling my story of how deep and dark depression I was in, some of my best friends didn't even know.
Wow.
And they were shocked. And now my purpose is just let people know because we're all going through some of the same things. Vocalize it. Use your support system. Use the friends and family around you to get out of it. But also at the same time, be very wary about how you hand your life over. Is it to social media? Is it to media? Is it to religion or education or any of the things? You could fill a bucket full of whatever it is. It could be golf. It doesn't have to be these kind of things that are prevalent in society today. Is it for you or are you doing it for others? And then again, when you have the work ethic that I described earlier, it just makes it worse. And you just keep digging and digging and digging until finally you're at the bottom of the hole and there's no ladder to get out of it. But I'm going to tell everyone there is a ladder. You just have to look really hard. It's buried in there.
I would imagine with what you're doing, it's about seeing somebody for who they are. All of
Hmm.
us want to be seen for our genuine selves. Do you remember the person or the moment in your life where someone saw you for who you were, no matter where you were, whether you were depressed or things weren't going right in your life, but someone saw you for the abilities and capabilities that you had.
Yeah, it was as recent as February of 2025. I was at my lowest point. I had just put another friend in the ground from suicide, and I took it internally. And I was sitting in a chair, and I told my wife, I'm not going to get up until I give myself permission to like myself again. That took an hour and a half, Joe. Finally, I got up, and probably 10 minutes later, I got a phone call from a friend in California, all the way across the country. And he said, Bobby, how are you doing? As we often say, how many conversations do we start like that? For the first time in my life, I told him, I'm not well, but I'm going to be well. I just don't know how to be well. And that guy stopped everything he was doing, put me in contact with someone here on the East Coast that could help me. And I think when you asked me that question, I got goosebumps because I remember that so vividly. It was the time that in my life that really started changing anything. Was it a switch? No. But was it a fader knob? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so now a year, almost a year and a half later, I can tell you that that one moment set me in motion to the man that's in front of you today.
But gradually throughout your life, there was probably enough that was going on that led you to the point where you knew that you wanted to get better. Who has been that inspiration? Who's been that hero that's allowed you to eventually find your happiness and your place in the world?
Ultimately, it has to be me, but the external factors are probably two. It's my wife, who always loved me, was always there to guide me. I just wasn't really willing to listen. I wasn't ready to listen. So that's why it does take you. No one's coming to save you. You have to save yourself no matter what. And then another one, I don't know if you've ever heard of the former Navy SEAL, David Goggins.
Yeah.
When I was at my lowest, and I went to a doctor, I had a hernia, was in terrible stomach pain. Fortunately, it was just a hernia. I jump in my truck, and there's David Goggins on a podcast. I hadn't dialed it up. I had never heard of him before. But his story, I said, I can do this. And he inspired me to, start running and to start working on my physical health and then eventually mental health and then spiritual health, all those kind of work. So those two people in my life were kind of pivotal. But as a coach, I like to tell people, because you said, see you where you're at.
Yeah.
You need to see yourself where you're at, and that's certainly what I needed to do. And it took a couple years before I really got into the rhythm where I could see myself, and I was ready for that phone call in February of 2025. So it was kind of a long process, but at the end of the day, that's what I realized. Had I just seen myself as the person that I am a good person, and started liking myself, and then eventually loving myself, man, that is the key to everything.
So if you could have a dream person on the planet, anybody alive on the planet right now to be on your podcast, to interview them, spend some time with them, who would that be? Who would you love to interview?
Man. It would probably be David Goggins,
Yeah.
just because he was so is influential in my life. But there's so many people. I mean, like Simon Sinek. I love the way he thinks. I love, man, John Maxwell, the leadership coach. I mean, there's so many people out there. But yeah, if I had to give you one, because that's what you asked for, it'd probably be David Goggins, just because he was the guy that kind of started this catalyst for me.
So, in the realm of leadership, we have these examples, whether it's in sports with a coach or it's a politician or something along those lines. Growing up, who were those leaders, the voices that were in your head that have led to the way that you view leadership?
Yeah, some of the ones I mentioned, especially the John Maxwell world. Of course, a guy like Tony Robbins, normally he's like self-help, but a lot of it's leadership. And I used to love like watching politicians, the presidents. I like the way they carried the governor. I was always kind of mesmerized by the way they carry those people. And it's funny now, it's like I'm completely away from all that because a lot of times that's just management versus leadership. But the older I get now, I like to look at the people who self-lead. And that's what brings me back to like a guy like David Goggins or anyone that's made a change in their lives, the impossible. Yesterday, I was watching a video of a guy running the Badwater 135, I believe is the name of the race, which is like a grueling race in the desert there in California. And the guy like failed. He crawled to the finish line when he was younger. And then they showed it too, like just a couple weeks ago, and he was 80 years old and he completed the race. Like that to me is a leader because that guy took all the obstacles out of his life and went after the prize at probably no cause. without cause. I'm messing that up there. But he didn't allow himself to stand in his own way. And I'm a big proponent of self-leadership today, which is a theory, is a self-leadership theory. But the theory basically says you can't lead others until you lead yourself. I like to reframe it for mine, is we have to govern our inner world so our external world reflects our values, convictions, visions, etc.
So, the one thing about changing your life is that it requires some level of risk. What do you think is the biggest risk that you've taken in your life to finally get to this point where you're helping others find their real purpose and mission?
I think it's you got to go uncharted, right? To become a coach or become a leadership influencer, if you will. They're full of them. I mean, the world is full of them. You grab YouTube, you grab, Instagram, they're all over the place. It's finding your own identity and then also taking the risk to go out and do something. Because I've been a consultant now for 20 plus years. So consultancy and coaching are completely different. And so it's kind of getting out of that mindset where you tell someone what to do. Whereas as a coach, I help guide people to where they're at and start asking better questions and thinking through things a little more. Because again, like you said earlier, and you said it so well, until you see yourself as others see you, probably no change is not possible.
Yeah.
So that was a risk because again, for someone who kind of lived on the other side of that, it's like you have to re-identify and reinvent yourself as you go forward.
So, what is that energy every day for you to wake up to do this work that you do? You're trying to change lives, change minds, and the human mind can be a murky place. So, and there's a lot of expectations, a lot of strings to pull. What is that energy to do your job well, take care of your soul, your family, all of the things that are part of your reality every day? What is that energy for you?
The energy is just if I can help one person not hurt themselves, either physically, emotionally, spiritually, every day. And I tell you what, once you get that locked in, I don't wake up any morning with anxiety. I wake up ready to hit the ground running. Another thing I think is that helps feed my energy is I bathe myself in positivity. I've cut out all the negative influences in my life. If something makes me stressed or I start thinking negatively or start judging myself or others, I just remove it from my life. And a lot of people say, "Oh, well, I can't stop watching the news or I can't stop social media." Well, what's stopping you? You're the one that's stopping you, right? And once I got to that point, it's an energy. I say this on my podcast and my writings all the time. If I could give you a pill where you could wake up every morning focused, dedicated to what you're doing because you know that's your purpose for the day. That doesn't mean every day's cherry, but what it does mean is that every day you've got this burning desire in your soul, and that's the energy you need. I don't believe in motivation. Motivation is an emotion; it comes and goes. But if you have inspiration, watch out, world. Think of how much impact we could have and what a better place the world could be if we all had the inspiration and do what we want to do every single day of our lives.
For sure. So, Bobby, at the end of the day, I'm curious. If you had a dream tonight, you walked into a room with the 18-year-old version of you, and there was a film projector. You walked up and clicked play, and there was a 60-second highlight reel of the life you've lived. Would that young version of you believe that your life turned out this way?
I don't think so at all because, we all set ideals and expectations for ourselves. But if we take a look back at 18 years or even the 10-year-old versions you mentioned earlier, look how much farther we've come than we ever imagined. But yet at the same time, we self-deprecate. We have self-doubt. We have anxiety. We have fears about what we're doing. But I like that. I like that kind of example and that kind of exercise to go back to yourself and look at it. Now, I hope my 18-year-old version of myself would say, "Hey, you missed the railroad tracks for quite a long time of your life." But, the fact is you can get back on and you can go. So I encourage everyone only look in the past to see how far you've come because we've all done so much more than we ever thought, especially at a young age. Like, hey, go back, not a professional tuba player, but at the same time, this is where I need to be at this moment. And I think my 18-year-old self would be proud of me.
Would you give that young version of you any advice?
Yeah, I would say don't outsource your soul. Know who you are. Protect that more than anything else in the world because once you give away your thoughts, it's very difficult to get them back.
Yeah. So, in that 60-second highlight reel, What are you the happiest about? What are you the proudest of when you look back on your life?
I think I'm proudest that I now understand that I can make a difference. And it's not for others, but it's internal. It's intrinsic motivation. There goes the motivation word again, but it all comes from inside. It's like, I don't care what you're thinking or my next door neighbor's thinking because in reality, now I realize they may think about me for a few minutes a day or a few seconds when I'm right in front of them, but the rest of us, we're all just trying to do the best that we can do. And I know that sounds kind of like a little easy on the answer there, but once you get to that place where you're comfortable in your own skin and you love yourself, it really is my greatest accomplishment because 6 years ago, I never thought that was possible. I thought I would just live the rest of my days in misery. And we have such a short time on earth and we do so many things. Why not enjoy them every day? And I think my proudest moment is that I realized that I was the one that was preventing me from that. No one else, no circumstance around me. It was purely me. And so I'm very proud at age 48 that I now can like live the rest of my days with this mentality.
So let's get into something podcasting centric. What was the first podcast you got hooked on that you loved, that you couldn't stop listening to?
I got hooked on this one called No Agenda. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's
I've heard
two
of it.
guys. Yeah, they just do clips, and yeah, I was introduced to that way back in the day. And then of course Joe Rogan was kind of at the same time because what I love most about Joe Rogan is that he interviews the most interesting people, right? I mean, whether they're a sports figure or a psychologist or an academic or even some of his comedian friends, it's those conversations that are deeper than a 20-second soundbite, and you can really start understanding how people think. And that's why I like podcasts in general. This whole long form, you really get to know someone, and you can really learn and apply those lessons to your life.
Well, we're in the same age realm as Gen X, kind of that world, and there was nothing like this growing up. You had the three or four major networks. Most of your cable stations were full of like talk show kinds of things. So this level of like civil discourse to celebrate who we are, did as a deviation from all the headlines that tend to be dark anyway. This seems to be the happy place for people to hop into and have a choice of what they want to listen to and who they want to get indulged with.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful opportunity because, like I said, it gets to the human element. It gets to the why of why people exist, the what they're doing, and it's not surface level, right? And it's typically not selling. I mean, of course, you go on podcasts sometimes when people are trying to sell you something, but at the end of the day, like if you see someone that you admire and you listen to them on three or four different podcasts, you can then start understanding what it took for them to get there because you probably heard the statement that instant success takes a long time.
Yeah.
Well, most people don't look at the journey of what it took for this person to get there. Like, most people don't realize that Jeff Bezos used to sit in his garage at night on the ground boxing up books to ship out. And now look at him, what, 20, 30 years later, he's runs one of the biggest companies in the world. Well, what was in his mind then and what propelled him every single day to get what he is? We all have greatness inside us. And that's what I love most about podcast is you can take someone. And then another thing too is like, who would have ever heard of Bobby Shelton before? And it's like now you get to go into my world and learn from me, I hope. And there's so many people around that are doing incredible things, and that's what the podcast opens up the doors to these kind of conversations.
I remember in high school, I was a cross country runner, and there was somebody on the team, and we hung out a little bit. I remember asking him at one point, I said, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" And he was like, "I want to be a world famous chef." And I was like, "I didn't even know you cooked." And now he's one of the biggest chocolatiers in the world. His name is Christopher Elbow. He was on Oprah, and he works with a local brewery, and they make a chocolate beer. But he has like these artisan chocolates, and he's one of the best in the world. And it's wild how you like with Bezos, you get these people that incubate these dreams. Because I'm sure he was saying the same thing early on in his life. I'm going to be the biggest independent bookseller in the world. I remember buying books off of Amazon when it was just books and thought, how cool is this? And now it's just everybody buys everything from Amazon, you know?
Y- Yeah, you could get it like the next day even. I mean, yeah,
Yes.
I bet you it would be interesting to have Jeff Bezos on the show or on a show because what was he thinking at 18? Like,
Yeah.
and again, I'm sure, like you said, he wanted to be a world, and even your friend, the chef, I mean, wanted to be a world famous chef, and he got it. But like, how much farther has he taken his career?
Yeah.
Both of those gentlemen that they could never have wild, and that's why ideals are so dangerous, right? It's like chasing a horizon. you're never going to get there. So don't be disappointed. Just keep pushing the envelope. And man, to have that passion and purpose at as a teen, and then living it now in their 40s or 50s, whatever this guy is wow, it's just truly amazing.
Yeah. Well, in this era of AI, I saw something the other day that said, what if these certain people weren't superstars? And like Bruce Springsteen was on a construction site eating a sandwich. And there was these other people that are mega famous, like Beyonce was like working a reception area at like a bank or something. And it's like all of us have these opportunities. And it's like trains that go in the night. Like there's a chance that it's going to happen, but there's a chance that it may not happen, but it's that dream. And a lot of them probably manifested it, and it takes a lot of work, like even with like the Beatles, for instance, or U2. It took them 10 or 15 years to even get to a point where they could have that album that we would all know about right now. And you just got to
Yeah.
work hard.
And I like that for two reasons from a leadership perspective. Number one, be great wherever you are
Hmm.
because you never know when the next opportunity is going to come. So, if Bruce Springsteen was a construction worker, I'm sure he would excel at it,
Yeah.
right? Because, he has that work ethic and, but find happiness. So many people are dissatisfied where they are today that they don't go forward. And now I've already lost my second point because I got so excited about the first one. But taking the hard work, how long it took.
Yeah.
So many people quit too early. You don't know. How about if you're one post away, one podcast away, your next book away from hitting it big? Don't be discouraged by metrics early on because if you're living that purpose that I talked about earlier and you really feel good about what you're doing, don't let any measurement, because you can't control that, right?
Yep.
I love Stoicism, and Stoicism says control what you can control, and that's very little. And it's your thoughts and your actions, right? So just keep going after it because you never know. I mean, like going back to Joe Rogan, his first few shows, he's like, "Yeah, I just wanted to talk to my friends," and he never, in his wildest imagination, what was his last contract, like
Yeah.
$500 million or something like that? Yeah, so from a leadership perspective and a coaching perspective, be the best you can wherever you're at, flower where you're planted, because eventually a bird or the wind's going to take you to the next place. You can flower there, and then never give up. If you find the work that matters to you, never give up on it. Just keep doing it, doing it, doing it, and see what happens.
So before I got into podcasting, way back, I wanted to get into sports journalism and put it on the back burner, and I focused on visual arts. This is one of mine behind me, and I got a show way, way back after my son was born. He's 21 now. He was about a year or two old. I got into a major gallery downtown, and I remember I was excited and I was getting ready to hang everything up, and they were like, the key to all of this, being in this space right now, is what are you going to do after this is over with? And that's the
Mm.
thing. It's one thing when you're excited and you're thinking about this future, but what are you going to do when you leave this show? And that's it. It's all about like what were the Beatles going to do after they finally hit that one Liverpool club they wanted to go to? What are you going to do after that? And it's always about keeping that love, keeping that flame going, you know?
No, I love that so much. And I often tell people, what are you going to do with this information? But
Yeah.
what are you going to do with this success? What are you going to do? Because like you said, it's fleeting. And you can read every book that's ever been published, but if you don't do anything about it,
Hmm.
what good is it? You can work your tail off. You can get into the art gallery, which that's a very beautiful piece of art. I like that
Thank
a
you.
lot. I've been admiring it this whole time.
Thank
But
you.
but what are you going to do about it? Because if you just stop there, then your voice ceases.
Yeah.
Your inspiration of others ceases. The amount of good you can pour back into your society, it all goes away. So yeah, I like that whole concept. What are you going to
Yeah.
do? Fill in the blank.
That's it.
Information, talent, treasure, whatever you want to put in there.
Absolutely. So let's get to the true crossroads of your soul. Everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, all of your listeners, all of your fans, all of the clients, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
My perception of me is that I'm a man that was given a second chance, and it was for a reason. And no matter what anyone else thinks of me, I just want to every day living congruent. I want to, if I ever was put on trial for the standards and the vision and the purpose that I have, I'd love to be convicted by all my peers that, yeah, not only did I say it, but I lived it. And I'm starting to see that in my daily actions. And that's my perception of me as of today.
So if anybody wants to dive into all of the different realms from your newsletter, podcast, your book, any of the good business, hire you questions, where's the best place to go?
Probably the best is Easy Hard versus hard.com. That is the name of my book, which is also on Amazon. I run a podcast called the Self Leadership Lab. As far as newsletters goes, they're on LinkedIn or Substack. And on Substack, I have two. One's also called the Self Leadership Lab, and the other one is called Stoic Faith, where I blend Stoicism with the scripture and kind of give, that one's main for men because I am a man. Not that I'm excluded women. I have a lot of women that benefit from it as well. But it's just a daily affirmation, a little prayer. It's just something to think about along the day because with any change, it takes time. You didn't get to where you are overnight, so you're not going to get out of it overnight. But again, it goes back to that bathe in positivity. And if you just read a little short, those are real short. Probably take you a minute or two to read those, where the Self Leadership Lab may take you 3 minutes. I don't know. But yeah, that's where you can get me on all those vehicles.
Wonderful. I will put all these links in the show notes. Bobby, this has been a joy. Great to meet you. Thank you so much for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with everything. I appreciate it.
Hey, Joe, thanks for having me on. It's been a real pleasure.
Absolutely.